water is the driving force of all nature. Unfortunately for our planet, we're running out, and the world's lakes are disappearing. All around the globe, climate change and human activity threaten their very existence and the future of the world's ecosystem. In America, California's Salton Sea is drying up, and we're facing what could become the worst ecological disaster of our generation.
If it dries up, it's going to be a catastrophe.
So it could be as much as 100 tons of dust, fine particulate dust that could become airborne every day.
It's just a wall of dust just coming into your populated areas.
75 foot, 100 foot, looks like tidal waves of sand.
They're so tiny that if you breathe these particles in, they'll perfuse directly into your bloodstream through your lungs. And attached to these particles are chemicals.
Cadmium, arsenic, selenium, toxins that do remain neutral if they're wet. You could go in the water, a lot of people catch the fish, the animals are fine, but if those become airborne, people get really sick.
If we expose 140 square miles, we'll have air pollution, the worst in the world.
It's the largest lake in California, and most people have no idea about what will happen to it if it's allowed to dry up. So my goal became to make people aware for this place that I loved that was just dying right in front of me and dying right in front of everybody, and nobody seemed to care. Seeing more and more how it had changed from the time I used to come as I was a kid, seeing all the businesses that had closed, seeing the condition of the economy, the local economy, and my initial impression was just, wow. I almost in a way grew up here for several years of my childhood and teenage years. My parents and I, my brother and my sister, we'd go fishing, come home with hundreds of fish every weekend. Other than being hot, it was a great place to be. Where we used to camp, the water had receded hundreds of yards. So I did a little research and found that nobody had actually walked around the shoreline. I started making this a way to get attention for Salton Sea. I knew that the temperature in summertime could reach upwards of 120 degrees. The humidity levels at the shoreline when it's that hot is extreme. There's a heat index of over 150 degrees. I knew that that would be a challenge. I didn't know about things like the mud and the quicksand and crossing through the water and blisters and things that I would encounter. I didn't even know about any of that yet. For me, the challenge was the heat and the distance. It wasn't real yet until I came down here. It was right outside the yacht club, and I was just checking out the shoreline, and this woman and son were visiting. I asked her if she'd ever been here before. She said no. I told her I used to come camping down here all the time, and I just said, you know what? I'm going to walk around this lake. I'm going to be the first person to walk around this lake. And from that moment on, it became real. Planning and training consisted of me walking and mapping out the entire shoreline. And I wanted to walk every inch of that shoreline a few miles at a time so that I knew at any given spot what I would have to deal with. Was there mud here? Did I have to cross a river or whatever? So I wanted to be completely familiar with the shoreline. So over the course of a year, my plan was to come down and walk a specific section, mark it off on my map, which was in my office, of the big map of the Salton Sea, mark that section off until I had mapped out the entire shoreline. And I wanted to do as much of that in summer and during the heat as possible so that I was also acclimating myself to the weather. As I started realizing the scope of what it meant, it wasn't just a hike, that I really started to question, was this possible? Can I do this? And every time I started thinking ahead and thinking of all the things that could go wrong, all the things I had to do, I would have doubts in the back of my mind saying, you can't do this, you shouldn't do this. To kind of counter those negative thoughts, I would tell more people. The more public I made it and the more people that knew about it, the more difficult it was for me to just give up like so many other things I've done in my life. The reason I started to do this, the reason I came up with the whole idea, it was all a way that I could make a difference positively for Salton Sea. As day one got closer the night before, and as I was realizing that everything that I had been living for the last year was all coming to a head now, I started I was anxious, I was scared. I didn't know, I guess my biggest fear was failure. There was the real possibility that failure meant death. miles from where anybody would be to help me. Heat stroke, heat exhaustion, drowning in one of the rivers. Failure meant that I would be dead. And that scared me, and it pushed me just to let people know what's happening to Salton Sea. Walking up to the starting line, I was excited, and I was happy that we were starting, but I was scared. I had done every section of beach in the previous year, bit by bit, mile by mile, but I had never, up to that point, I had still never walked more than 15 miles or 18 miles in one day, much less 20 miles a day for 6 days in a row. So I still didn't know physically if I would be able to do it. I was confident that I would, but I had never done it. I had never done it in the expected temperatures, and I was worried about failure. I was worried about getting stuck in mud. I was worried about all the things that I had grown to become afraid of, or all the challenges that I knew I would be facing over the previous year. So I was excited and concerned at the same time. So I started the walk at the North Shore Yacht Club, right at the flagpole. We had a big group, 6 in the morning, to see me off. There was a lot of energy. It was really exciting. Feet are feeling good, my legs are feeling good. It's not hot today. I don't think we could have asked for better weather. It's a little cold and windy. That's actually a blessing. I don't think the temperature broke 80 degrees. It's a bit humid, but it's made it for a nice, easy walk so far today. I don't have to deal with dehydration or anything like that with the 100+ degree temperatures. My legs feel great. So far it's gone according to plan, on schedule. I'm actually a bit ahead of schedule. So day one is looking pretty good. Came through here just almost exactly a year ago, and just a mile or so down the beach looking at some of the other stranded boats that were underwater a year ago, and now they're 100 yards, 50 yards from where the water is. So in the last year, the water has drastically dropped. That's just amazing to me how quickly the water is receding. If the rate that it's dropped in the last year continues, or if it accelerates like they say it's going to starting in 2017, I can't even imagine what it'll look like. The section of beach from Corvina Beach, which was just a few miles south of the starting point, is where I had walked dozens, if not hundreds of times as a kid, a little 2 or 3 mile section. Because as a kid out here, when I got bored, I would walk. And I guess looking back, that's probably where some of the inspiration came from, and I didn't actually realize that until later. Walking southward 15, 18 miles or so to Bombay Beach, there was a group of people waiting for me there. Little event get together for some of the followers at the ski inn in Bombay Beach. We'll have some lunch there, cool off, and continue down to Nyland Marina, another 4 or 5 miles down the beach. Finish the day at 22 miles.
It's a place where people live, and we need to save it, because if they let the lake dry up, people won't be able to live here. And that includes Imperial County, Imperial Valley, Coachella Valley, Palm Springs. You can't eminent domain a quarter of Southern California.
Things like asthma, emphysema, lung cancer, heart disease, it affects your entire body because these are very fine particles.
And once airborne, these particles can travel hundreds of miles. So it's not just a local problem. This is a southwestern United States problem. It is a very broad interstate problem. It's going to be impacting people that live in Phoenix. It's a binational problem. It'll be impacting the 1 million or so people that live in Mexicali.
In the state of California, we have the #1 asthma rate for adolescents and children.
We have 432 students, grades 7 through 12. And as far as their, I'm really concerned about their health. I've seen in the past 5 years, an increase in the number of health-related absences, health-related notes. Again, without necessarily showing you all the private information, we do have a rise in the number of students who carry an inhaler, who have a registered inhaler here, who have asthmatic issues. every day we got students sitting here in the office saying, I just need a breather, literally, because they're having a hard time coping with the particulates. So here's some of our inhalers that we have registered. Keep in mind, this is a school of 430 students, so you can probably see about 10-15 of them registered. I found that only 1 in 10 students registers their inhaler with us. I see them walking around. The reason why they don't register is because if they have an asthma attack, somebody has to come all the way over here, get their inhaler. They don't want to run that risk, and so only a very few register. But this is a snapshot of what happens.
If there's one thing we can learn from history, we can look to Owens Lake in Central California. The water was transferred away, and it created the largest dust storms in North America at that time.
We've seen a similar problem on a slightly smaller scale at Owens Lake, is already $2.4 billion and counting, and we don't want to see that at the Salton Sea.
But we've actually measured those same sediments coming from Owens Dry Lake have been measured as far south as Riverside County, or as far east as Arizona. So we know that these particles can, once they're up there, they can travel very long distances.
Day 2 started at Nyland Marina. It was planned to end at the Alamo River, which is the second largest river that goes into Salton Sea. The first of a few big obstacles that I'd be facing, which I was going to have to walk through, and that was worrisome because there's mud in the rivers and around the rivers. If I were to fall in the mud and have my hands go into the mud, it could have ended right there. I was more worried about sinking in the mud and getting stuck in the mud and dying as others have. It's day number 2, around 6:30 in the morning, getting ready to start from Nyland Marina all the way down to just before the river. Got 1 river to cross today. That always makes me a little bit nervous. We went out in rain and clouds and woke up this morning and it's clear. Sun is out and not a cloud in the sky. The water is like glass. It's going to warm up today, so it'll be more of what I'm used to walking through. Probably only about 75 or 80 degrees, but it should get up to at least 100 degrees and it'll probably be pretty humid. So looking forward to a good day. The heat's starting to come on. It's going to get tougher as the sun gets hotter. My thermometer says it just hit 100. Had to get the cover out and put it on because I could really feel it heating up on my head. It's a little humid, but I could feel that sun burning right through what little hair I've got left. The Alamo River was surrounded in mud, more like quicksand, and for the first time it brought me to a stop. I got stuck in the mud and it nearly ended the walk. I went through plan A and plan B and plan C and plan D, and I was really starting to get concerned. That was one of the tougher spots and one of the most dangerous areas. The further up toward the desert, the deeper it is. The further down toward the sea, the muddier it is. So I have to find a spot that's a good compromise between mud and sand and depth. Hopefully there's not a deep drop-off channel. And this is very difficult to walk through, and I've almost twisted my ankle a few times. If you can see off in the distance the steam coming out of those buildings, those are geothermal power plants. And a lot of people don't know that there's more geothermal power right down here in this southern section of Salton Sea than anywhere in California, possibly the United States. A lot of geothermal power potential down here, so we just need to take advantage of it. There's a lot of energy there. A couple of different areas of known mud pots around Salton Sea, and they're both a couple of miles from here. I don't want to get too close because the ground is unstable. I have a friend over at some of the other mud pots not far from here actually fell through the surface and fell in and got severely burned. So the ground is unstable, it's muddy, and it's just very thin, and you can just pop through the crust and drop right in. So I would love to go poke my stick in there or put my hand in to see how hot it is, but I'm not going to. But this is just another one of those amazing things that I come across as I'm walking around out here.
Can't thank you enough, partner.
Oh, thank you.
Been coming here 50 years.
Well, cool. Hope we'll get some.
And you're the first one that's done anything. You're doing a hell of a job.
Thank you.
Risking your life. This is very treacherous out here.
Yeah, and later in the week when it gets warm, when it gets really warm.
Yeah.
Congratulations. You're really gonna have
Yeah.
to hear. Thanks, man.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're welcome. Let's save the sea.
Serious.
Save our sea.
Really? Great. Yeah, this individual is taking his life in his hands right now. The weather, we're over 100 degrees, and he's bringing attention to the Salton Sea. It's phenomenal. I've been here over 50 years and never seen it this bad. And this gentleman is going to bring attention to our plight. He's risking his life, as far as I'm concerned.
Red Hill Marina and the entire area are one of my favorite places at Salton Sea. The extinct volcano, beautiful red hills that is called Red Hill. The mud pots, Mullet Island sticking up out of the middle of nowhere. It's a really interesting place. Walking through, seeing the old dried up boat dock starting to waste away hundreds of yards from any water made me think of how great it probably once was. And seeing the shoreline covered in dead fish was bizarre.
There's a misconception that the fish are dying because there's some sort of toxicity in the water.
But in fact, the sea is not polluted at all. Our studies have shown that if you just took the salt out of that, and all the nitrates and fertilizer runoff that's in there, you could drink this. It meets Clean Water Drinking Act, Safe Drinking Water Act standards for chemical constituents. The problem is not that it's polluted, but it's too nutrient rich from fertilizer runoff. And this causes algae blooms, lots of sunlight, lots of nitrates and phosphates from the fertilizer causes huge algae blooms.
When this algae decomposes, actually sucks the oxygen out of the water, and fish die by the millions. They suffocate. Most of the fish kills are from lack of oxygen in the water due to the massive amounts of algae.
It's not polluted, it's too alive.
The amount of bird life at Salton Sea is incredible. Nowhere ever have I seen so many birds in such a relatively small area. In some places, the entire shoreline was covered in birds, and as I walked through, they would all take to flight, and they would almost blot out the sky in some cases because there were so many birds.
On any given day of the year, we'll see 100,000, more or less, birds in and on the shoreline of the Salton Sea on any given day. We can say confidently millions. The number that we've documented out here, which is 424 bird species, it's a very important, obviously, and a very important area for birds. The Salton Sea provides a good, reliable habitat year in and year out.
In California, we have lost 95% of our wetlands. This is the last place where over 400 species of birds live. So this is the last outpost for birds in California.
The number one issue is water quality. Salinity is projected to really start increasing after 2017. The ability for the Salton Sea to sustain aquatic life is the issue that we're now facing that we need to find a solution for.
This is an ecological disaster that it'll affect this high school and this community, obviously, but it has further reaching implications than anything that you will see here.
The Pacific Flyway is valuable not just to California Salton Sea. The birds nesting there over the winter come from and return to Central America and as far north as Canada. So there are international issues at stake here as well.
It affects ecosystems across the entire hemisphere. There's nowhere else for the birds to go.
One of the strange things about walking around the shoreline and the entire area in general is the amount of agriculture, the amount of farms, the number of huge open green fields out in the middle of the desert where you would least expect it. When temperatures are 110, 115 degrees, and seeing miles of green fields is just amazing. The entire northern section and the entire southern section are almost completely surrounded with agriculture. These farms are one of the only things keeping the economy alive in the area. If the farms go, I don't know what will happen to the economy.
Agriculture in the valley is a huge economic engine in the billions of dollars every year.
Ag industry in Imperial Valley is the big driver, valued at around $1 to $2 billion a year in total revenues.
This is one of the richest farm areas certainly in California. So this is incredibly important as an agricultural production area.
Agriculture is the #1 industry here in Imperial County, and around the sea is some of the most fertile nutrient ground there is growing vegetables.
It is the breadbasket for winter produce for most of the United States.
The water body is a climate moderator. It'll make a 2 to 5 degree difference in temperature in the winter, which sometimes means the difference between frost damage and no frost damage.
If you think about putting salt on a leaf product like lettuce, head lettuce or something, it would decimate it, it would ruin it.
Most of the playa has got a salt content that's pretty high, and it's got a selenium content and other a little arsenic in places. That on crops is very damaging. Even just the dust on crops is very damaging. So both of those issues are paramount to the agricultural industry down here.
We would see an increase in costs for produce across the nation, especially in winter months when we rely on that.
If the farmers can't farm their vegetables, food prices all over the country would rise. Such a large percentage of agriculture comes from the area, the whole United States would be impacted by price increases. The New River is one of the most polluted rivers in the United States, not with trash and the sort of things you would expect to see, but with chemical pollution and potential sewage pollution. I got a little in my mouth as I was crossing. That was unexpected and not planned for. But the other issue was that if I had any cuts or scratches on my legs or anywhere, I didn't want any of that water to get in and get a potential infection, because just a little infection in a blister or cut or scratch could really endanger the walk. It's hot today, 102 or so. It's humid. I can feel the heat radiating off the ground, so I'm getting it from both sides, the top and the bottom. I just can't think straight. So I'm starting to feel the challenge that I so craved. I'm feeling it now. One of the things that really surprised me was the amount of community support and the amount of people that were really coming out to support me. More and more people started coming out. I'd see more and more people along the route driving and walking with me and waving and honking. We had to get together on Poe Road. That's a remote area. It's difficult to get to. There's nothing there for miles. And a couple dozen people or so came to support me as my walk progressed that way. Day 3, Poe Road, 10 miles in. I ran into a problem with the mud over by the New River. Mud up to my thighs. That was tough. It was a tough stretch. Most of my mind was blank and just solely focused on getting through that day. Every time I looked at the day as a 20-mile day, it kind of got overwhelming. When I looked at the walk as a 102-mile walk, which it ended up being, it got overwhelming. And all I would think about was all the ways to fail, all the places to get stuck, all the things that could go wrong. One of my biggest concerns was that I wouldn't be able to finish the walk because of a huge blister or an infected blister or something like that. And this has been my big worry. Has been blisters. So we'll see how we end up dealing with this going forward. So it was around this point that I realized that I was on a timeline. I had to get the word out before 2018, all because of the QSA.
The quantification settlement agreement is this somewhat convoluted, I've called it a shell game, where we're moving the cups around as if there's water under them, but really there's not. They are arguing over allocations of water in the Colorado River based on high flow years in the 1960s and 70s, and that water is not there. We don't have that much water in the river. All of the Salton Sea water today is almost all coming from the Colorado River, which is over allocated And we all know the river itself is in a record drought. Water levels are at record lows behind Lake Powell and others along the river. And frankly, I just don't think that we can rely on the Colorado River as a sustainable water supply for the sea. But basically, the Supreme Court established that each of the lower basin states of the Colorado River all have rights to certain shares of amounts of water in the river. California's share under that law is 4.4 million acre feet a year. California's been taking much more than that, or somewhat more than that, for decades because we could. We had the aqueducts and the infrastructure to physically take those withdrawals. This was fine until the other states also developed the infrastructure to take their shares. And then they sued California for hogging the water. And the result was the quantification settlement agreement, which says, okay, California, you've got to systematically reduce your draw down to your 4.4 million acre feet.
In order to do this, California decided to divert remaining flows sustaining the sea to make up for the loss of water from the QSA. This means that by the end of 2017, we will see a drastic reduction in the amount of water flowing into the sea.
The amount of water draining from the Imperial Valley primarily will be reduced by 20,000 acre feet per year cumulatively for 15 years for a total reduction of inflow of 300,000 acre feet from 1.3 million acre feet today. So that's about 1/4 of the total inflow will be reduced. Now, one of the features about the Salton Sea, 370 square miles, yet it's only 50-some feet deep. That's like a football field with 1 inch of water in it. So it renders it very sensitive to even slight changes of inflow have huge consequences of where the seashore is and how it retracts. We've modeled the lake bed exposures resulting from a 300,000 acre foot reduction of inflow to expose on the order of 60,000 acres. That's about 90 square miles.
That would make the salinity spike really quick. The fish would die, the birds would have no food, the dust would come quickly, and the dust storms that come here are mammoth. If we transfer all the water away from the Salton Sea, and we don't have a new water source in mind and lined up, it will dry up.
I'm at the start of day number 4, which is going to be the halfway point. Actually, I should be coming up on the halfway point pretty soon. I'm walking through the abandoned Navy base at Salton Sea, which was pretty active in the 1940s. They did testing of atomic bomb shapes as part of the Manhattan Project, and then they did live fire testing and quite a few interesting things here up through the 80s and very early 90s until they just could no longer deal with the flooding. One thing that they didn't fully walk away from, though, was the leftovers from all of the live fire training that they did. And so they have these nice reminders that if you see something interesting on the ground, don't pick it up and don't start playing with it because it could explode in your face. Those signs are all over the perimeter of the property. So I'm always a little concerned about walking through here. You know, the fear is accidentally stepping on a landmine or something buried that's not going to be good. That keeps me on my toes coming through this area. I'm walking through what was once a set of nice marinas in Salton City. And as you can see now, it's completely dry. 10 years ago, I'd be 6 feet underwater right now. So somebody asked me how I keep track of my hydration. And of course, I only have 1 kidney. I was born with 1 kidney. So I have to be extra careful of dehydration because I don't have the same kidney function of a normal person. So hydration is important, but on the other hand, overhydration can be a problem also, especially when it's humid and I'm sweating out all of the salts. You drink too much water, sweat out all the electrolytes and salts, and your body will shut down. That'll kill you as easy as dehydration, if not easier. So in addition to worrying about dehydration, I have to worry about overhydration. If you can see down there is what remains of the marina. There's a boat stranded there. So that's how much the Salton Sea has changed. And obviously this is just amazing to me. I can't imagine how much water it would take to fill up this whole area. It's getting hot. It was a predicted high of 107 today. My thermometer's reading 106, and I'm starting to feel it today. I grew some blisters just in the last few miles on my feet. I'm feeling the sun burning my legs. So yeah, it's not fun anymore. When I first started planning this walk around Salton Sea, the owner of this property, it's called Rancho La Playa, donated it to me to use it, and it was a great place, 150 acres from Highway 86 all the way out to the Salton Sea. And he passed away, sadly, just a few months ago, and since that has happened, it's just fallen apart. And I don't know if you can see, but this pier that owner, Leo, built by his own hand, and this used to be where the water was. You used to be able to walk out into the water here, and now you can see the water is way out there, several hundred yards away. So where I'm standing now, this would have been underwater just a few years ago, and now water's way down there. We had a lunch get-together at the community center, and the turnout there was amazing. Dozens, if not 100 people, reporters, NPR was there. I did a couple of interviews. It was one of the great memories I have, one of the few memories I have. But what I really remember is that I was shocked at the amount of people that came out just to support me. That night we had a dinner at Johnson's Landing in Salton City, and the turnout there was totally amazing. The place was packed. You couldn't fit more people in. I didn't get there until a little late, and a lot of people had already left and had come and gone because it was too full. I got up and I talked to the crowd and kind of surprised myself, because that's something that just a year or so before I would have been too shy or too nervous to do. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
But
I felt like everybody there was there to help support me, and I felt so comfortable standing up in front of everybody and just talking to them like if I knew them all. And in a way I did, because we all love Salton Sea. All those people live there. All those people had a lot more at stake by losing the Salton Sea than I do. The emotion that I felt from them was another thing that really shocked me, just the overall support of the crowd.
One of the reasons I wanted to start raising awareness for Salton Sea is because I had no idea. I loved the place as a kid, and I had no idea. I was totally ignorant of what had happened in the last 30 years and where it was. So, you guys have lived here. You live here now. You lived here for years. Obviously, you love this place. You guys love this place?
Yes. We've been here since I was 16.
Would it make you happy if we were able to save the sea? That would be a good thing, not just for you, not just for the economy, for the people that won't get the dust if the sea dries up. So for the whole area, that would be a good thing. Is that right?
Yes.
You guys agree?
Maybe we can get our insurance back.
And for our grandkids. So would you guys be happy if we could save our sea? And now the way this works is the more you love Salton Sea and the more you want to save Salton Sea, the louder you say it. Alright, so I'm going to count to 3, and we're going to do the loudest Save Our Sea on camera so that we can share it with the world.
There you go.
Alright? On 3. 1, 2, 3. Save our sea!
So how do we fix Salton Sea? Salton Sea needs water. It needs fresh water or seawater. The state of California needed to start fixing Salton Sea 10 years ago. Projects being proposed today are 10 years too late.
There's a whole host of proposals out there and options out there, but which one fits, which one can easily be done and maintained?
We want this to be developed in a way where it enhances the environment and stabilizes the ecology.
We need to bring the state, local government, and the federal government together to come up with an economic plan to fix the vitalization of the sea the right way the first time, make sure that it's turned into the sea it should be and was always supposed to be after it was built.
Whether it's renewable energy or wetlands, habitat development, we want to develop take an approach that is symbiotic. One development helps and reinforces the other. In other words, we want multiple benefits.
Currently, there are some great wetlands being created.
Measures to restore the wetlands around Red Hill, 600 acres can be restored there.
Habitat for wading birds, covering up one of the largest areas of playa that's been recently exposed.
From a water quality standpoint, it'll be an improved Salton Sea habitat.
What you're doing is, by shallow flooding and having these cells, you're also able to cover the playa, so you're taking care of the air quality on that subsection or that cell. And then the hope is that these cells could be expanded as the sea recedes, so you can keep building additional cells as you go around the sea when it starts exposing. So I think from that standpoint, it's great. All this comes back to dollars.
With that being said, these early start programs are important, but they are mere band-aids.
It's great for the wildlife. It'll help keep the dust down. It's just too little. A few hundred acres, 1% or 0.1% of the wetlands needed to prevent the dust storms, to prevent the problems. It's just too little, too late.
The only reliable alternative then is a sea-to-sea alternative, either through pipelines or through a canal lock lift system like the Panama Canal, some sort of connection to the open ocean.
The Sea of Cortez lies about little more than 100 miles south of the Salton Sea, and it is connected to the Pacific Ocean. In other words, all the water in the world lies 100 miles away, and it happens to be a natural river channel.
We believe that the new river has the capacity to bring ocean water from Mexico to the Salton Sea, and in a quantity enough, if you use both the new river and the Alamo, to stop the Salton Sea from going down.
Naturally letting it flow through those two creeks into the Salton Sea would be the best avenue.
Bring in extra water, desalinate that, and provide that to local communities on top of the water that you need to sustain the level of the Salton Sea. Solve the dust issue and solve the water crisis in one blow.
Desalinating the water and making it a viable drinking water so that the state of California can utilize it, the country of Mexico can utilize it. It's naturally flowing to us now as it is, and if it's fresh desalinated water, it won't have an effect on our regular drinking water.
This is a tremendous asset. This is an area on the planet Earth where ocean water will flow by gravity.
Salton Sea is 230 feet below sea level. In between, there's a dry lake bed. In between here, there's a dry canal called the Coyote Canal, leading almost halfway from the Sea of Cortez to the Salton Sea.
We'd essentially expand this canal to handle our 1.5 million acre feet on the Mexico side, and then we'd excavate a 35 by 20 foot deep canal for 45 miles through Imperial County. That's a gravity-fed, no-pump canal at approximately 900 million gallons a day.
From an engineering standpoint, you're just putting a straw from a higher pond to a lower one.
One of the strategies we often suggest to everyone is that you take the Salton Sea and you separate it into more manageable parts. You know, an environmental part for the wetlands and the existing projects that are running now, like Red Hill Bay or the Backbone, which are all important, viable projects. And then a water desalination filtration component to make the water usable for the fish, and then a dust management or dust elimination component which is what sea-to-sea is. And sea-to-sea just is simply importing approximately 1.5 million acre-feet to raise the lake level where there is no exposed playa and there is no dust. That just kills dust. But the filtration desal guys need to do their part to make the water quality better, and the existing environment projects are critical for the Pacific Flyway. So we really need 4 or 5 components working in harmony to fix the Salton Sea.
It would be a huge undertaking, probably along the lines of a Panama Canal-sized project. But I think if you do the math of not doing it or not doing anything and allowing the dust storms, allowing the toxic dust, allowing the people to get sick, allowing the people to die, and then look at the cost of cleaning all that up after the fact, some studies have already shown that it would be far less expensive to do something like a sea-to-sea project than it would be to clean up the aftermath of a huge ecological and health disaster. It would be expensive, but I think it would be worth every penny, and it would pay itself back in the long term.
This has huge potential benefits for Mexico. They could turn the Laguna Salada Playa into a Riviera of their own, which would be enormous for jobs and for the economic welfare of Mexicali and that region.
So the basin is comprised of 8 ranches on the west side, 1 large property on the east side. Those property owners are very much in favor of this project and helping the United States with our dust problem at the Salton Sea.
Mira, los habitantes de la zona de la Laguna Salada, los que realmente estamos en esta zona, estamos apoyando esta oportunidad que se nos está dando, porque va a ser una forma de desarrollar los grupos humanos, la comunidad. Y esa es una de las experiencias que tenemos que explotar para que toda la comunidad crezca, salen a otras partes y eso tenemos que evitarlo.
So the economic development component of our project, what's in it for the locals, what's in it for Mexico, is that we'll hire them to run our project down here. We'll support their farming operations. We'll buy products from them. So we'll take approximately 150,000 acres of dusty land, cover it with water and wetlands, and that will reduce dust in the region.
Bueno, lo importante es conseguir primero un trabajo estable en la zona y tener rentabilidad en los proyectos que tú hagas. Eso es importante para nosotros. Bueno, la comunidad que representamos aquí, 500 familias, sí estamos dispuestos a trabajar con los Estados Unidos en este proyecto. Que este proyecto nos ayude a un mejor nivel de vida.
We can not just save the sea, we can create jobs.
We're talking about high-tech engineering jobs and energy jobs. So this would be an economic boon for the entire region.
This could be the job experience that gets this country back on the run.
You're building now for things that are going to happen in the future.
Turn it into an economic engine for solar panels, for algae control, for farming, for geothermal, and then overall development by building houses and recreational uses for that sea, and turn it into a vital part of the economy of Southern California.
A restored sea is worth billions just in and of itself in increased property values, better human health values, fish and wildlife values, as opposed to a dead sea.
The estimates today are in the probably $10 billion market valuation increase just by adding water, just by fixing the water, and just by taking care of the environment.
So day 6, I knew was going to be a more difficult day, going through what I like to affectionately call Death Beach, which is one of the areas where the barnacle shells are the most deep and the most difficult to walk through. So I knew it would be a long, trudging day. And as I got about 8 or 10 miles away and I could see the yacht club in the distance, it kind of started to hit me that basically my entire life that I had been living for the previous year of living and eating and sleeping the Salton Sea walk was right there, just a few miles ahead of me. That's when the mind started to wander. The closer I got and the more I could see the yacht club, the finish line, the more I started thinking about, wow, this is it. That's when the mud and the stuff between here and there kind of started to go away, and I really started thinking about more of then what? What am I going to do after that? That became a big, for some reason, that was on my mind, is that I had no other life for the last year other than the Salton Sea walk. Everything else became less and less important, where I didn't care about if I had any blisters. Wasn't even putting on the waders that I used to walk through the canals anymore to keep my feet dry. It didn't matter anymore because it was right there. I could see the finish line. But as I walked up and turned the corner where it goes from beach to parking lot, I saw 50 people standing there, and that kind of shocked me. And then as I got closer and came around the corner more, I saw my wife and my son, and I hadn't seen them for a week. And then I saw 100 or more people all standing there cheering me on. And I think that kind of hit me. That not only did that affect me and hit me because I had finished and the finish line was right there, but that all these people came out to support me and support Salton Sea. At that point, as tired as I was and sleep deprived as I was, and the crowd and everybody yelling and cheering me on, that all kind of went away. But the support and the amount of people that came out to greet me was amazing. That really hit me more than anything. After that, it's another kind of a blank. I know that I went inside. I had originally planned, in thinking through in my head the days before what I would do on the finish line, I was going to stand up in front of everybody and say something profound and thankful. And I think I just went inside and kind of broke down. I think I was just overcome with everything, and I just kind of took it all in.
Thank you, buddy. Can I get that? Thank you, buddy. Thank you.
State Senate, we're honored to recognize you for your 100-plus mile walk and the importance of California's largest sea, and also your dedication to bring awareness to the restoration of the Salton Sea. On behalf of the California State Senate, State of California, and Senator Jeff Stone, we appreciate your efforts and look forward to following you for many times more.
One of the biggest questions that I'm asked, or that I'm asked most often in person, by my friends, by my family, is why should we save Salton Sea? Why should anybody care what happens to Salton Sea? If the Salton Sea is allowed to die, it will impact everyone from Mexico to Los Angeles, from San Diego to Barstow, directly impacting their health. Breathing that poison dust, asthma rates will go up, cancer rates will go up. If you live in California, if you live in that area, you'd better care. And when that happens, somebody's going to have to fix it then. People are going to be dying. And then who's going to pay? The state of California can't balance their budget. They're not going to have the money to pay. They avoided it. They kicked the can down the road year after year after year. So now everybody's going to have to pay.
We can pay for it now, we can pay for it later. Either way, we're going to pay for it.
We can pay $20 to $70 billion over the next 50 years and then thereon, or we can invest now on a sea-to-sea, whole sea solution, and together with that, develop 7 gigawatts of solar and geothermal energy, biodiesel algae production, and others, and I think create enough revenue stream to pay that right back in a reasonable time frame.
If we don't do Salton Sea restoration, which was, at least in my mind, a state obligation, and we rely on the mitigation. The state pays for that anyway.
The Salton Sea is definitely at a tipping point. We're at a place where we could either have a beautiful example of what we can do as human beings coming together with solutions in mind, a place for people and animals to live healthy for many, many years, or we can see an absolute environmental disaster.
Correctly done, the Salton Sea is an opportunity, not a catastrophic, disastrous problem.
So the Salton Sea is absolutely worth saving. To do less than save it is to do a great injustice to the environment and the economy of Southern California.
I see it being a very vital opportunity for not only recreational activities, including skiing, boating, and fishing, camping and hiking, but also an economic driver with homes and businesses around it.
This place could become what it was meant to be.
It would be a greater benefit to society to have this become something like it was before.
We could have golf courses, we could have boating, you know, we could have restaurants, we could have jobs. We could have a community that's thriving and not one that is turning into a ghost town. And that would be something to look forward to, something I'd be proud to be a part of.
It's a masterpiece that was an accident, and now we need to repaint it and put it back to what it needs to be. And that is being a vital part of Southern California, the Coachella Valley, the city of Indio, and our community.
So what can the average person in Mexico or the average person in California do? What we recommend is you get involved. You go to your senators, you go to your congressmen, you go to your supervisors, you go to your union, and you find something you like and get involved, get a hold of it, and just do it. Just roll up your sleeves and get in the game.
As an average citizen, you got to realize this is going to affect your community. This is going to affect your town, your kids, your grandkids, your husband, your wife. We really need you to get involved. We need you to talk to your senators, talk to your local representative, talk to your assemblyman, the governor. Come up with a plan. Make sure your voice is here. Power Together will come forward when we all agree that this is an issue that's going to affect us all in some way or another.
Tell your local representatives at county levels and water agency levels that they need to work together to solve this problem for the sake of everyone and everyone's kids and grandkids.
It's our choice, but we make this choice with our words, with our hearts, and with our pens. And we can write letters. We can get on social media. We can learn about the Salton Sea, share the stories about it.
We want to promote harmony. We want to promote the existing projects. We want to promote the geothermal. We want to promote the projects that aren't built yet, just waiting for funding. We want us all to work together. If we all work together, it'll get done. That's the key thing. We need to start now. We need to get people to play nice. We need people to cooperate, and we need to get going. We have less than 10 years to make this all happen.
So it's 1 year later, almost to the day. I've been back to the Salton Sea a few times, and I've noticed that the water level continues to go down. I've noticed that just from the time I had come back in 2014 till today, 2016, the water levels dropped dramatically, and it's going to continue that way unless someone does something. So I still like to think of myself as a big proponent of Salton Sea and saving the sea and the surrounding area. I still like to be as vocal as I can be to try to continue to get the word out, hopefully try to make other people and more people aware of Salton Sea and what's happening and what's going to happen if our leaders don't make some changes. A year later, has it made any difference? I like to hope that it has. I know that a lot of people got the Salton Sea in front of them. A lot of people know about the Salton Sea that maybe wouldn't have thought about it before had they not seen about the crazy guy that was walking around it in summertime. There have been some changes. Governor Brown has appointed a friend of mine to the head of the Salton Sea Task Force. There's been a few bills that have passed for more studying and some small projects that are helpful. I like to hope that I played a part in that, but we're just going to have to wait and see what our leaders do.
Since Randy's walk and the awareness that it brought to the community, to the Salton Sea, there's been definitely an uptick in community involvement and students wanting to get involved in their own sea.
Well, I have heard of Randy Brown, and he brought great awareness as he walked all the way around this lake, which is bigger than Lake Tahoe, and he did it in June. Like, it's hot. But he did it, and he did it every day, and people walked with him and cheered him on along the way, and what he did was awesome.
It was a flag waving for restoration louder than we had ever seen before.
He had a huge number of followers to his website and his Facebook page when he did that walk. A lot of people were aware about the Salton Sea due to him that were not aware before.
It did bring a lot of variety of individuals that never heard of the Salton Sea together, along with the environmentalists and other people that want to save the sea. So my hat's off to him and Eco Media for pushing that forward, because it really did put the Salton Sea back into the highlight of people realizing there was a problem.
We're so happy that he came here and brought so much awareness to this place. The morale that changed in this town was phenomenal. I'd never seen people so buzzed and so excited about the real thought that something would get done here.
I am always optimistic. I'm hopeful because there is more awareness.
It feels good to help bring attention to the problems, not just the water, but help prevent what could turn into the biggest environmental catastrophe ever if it's allowed to continue to die. It makes me feel proud that I was and am part of the many people that are saying, help save this place.
On behalf of all of us at the Salton Sea, save our sea. Right, Kubi? Save our sea.
Save our sea! Save our sea! Save our sea! Save our sea!
Save our sea!
Save our sea! Save our sea!
Save our sea!
Save our sea!
Save our sea!
Save our sea!
Save our sea!
Save our sea! Save our sea! Save our sea! Save our sea!
Save our sea! Save our sea!